Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Pardon Will Live. I'm your host, Dave Lilly, aka Pardon Will. It's Sunday. Happy Sunday, everybody. We're back. We're going to be talking about um, politics, like we always do. I got nothing fun. Talked about Deadpool. Talked about Doctor Doom last time. All the fun stuff. Now we're back to the miserable world of politics. And of course, you're going to want to hear what my opinion is because I'm so inclined to know about all the politics stuff. But no, just joking. We're going to talk about this cult stuff, this cult-like behavior on both the right and the left. We're going to get into it. I have not really spoken about the Kamala thing, her stepping in. So we're going to watch some clips, some fun clips, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about my opinions. That'll be spicy. Not really. They're pretty much everyone else's opinions that probably watch this. And then we're going to hop on over to what the Maga crowd got up to this week and all that jazz and talk about that. And then at the end, I'm going to give you my solutions on how to avoid being in a cult because apparently that's extremely hard these days. But before we get into that, and I got a whole new program set up. This is a bit of a test run. I got clips and stuff all pulled up. It should go fairly easy, but probably going to have issues with the camera. Knock on wood. Hopefully not, but if it does, I think I figured out a way to solve it fairly quickly. So either way, you know how this show is. It's just kind of duct taped together. Same with my personality. Just kind of all things stuck together with duct tape. Speaking of personality, if you like this podcast, you know the drill. Like and subscribe, you jabronis. Share this around. Do all that good stuff. But if you really like this podcast, you can go to my website, and I'm going to pull that up right now. Check it out. Go to pardonwill.com. This is the website and all of the cool stuff. My book is right up at the front. You can purchase the book. But if you really like this podcast, you're like, I want to check more of his stuff out. He's got art on here. You can go to take a look at the art. I've got gallery stuff set up in the works. You got comic art. You can go there and click on each one and purchase it. But I added one new one. And so I want to talk about this real quick. If you are like, you know what, this show's cool and all, but the coolest part about Pardon Will Live is that friggin' intro music. Like, golly, that intro music is what the kids call "quote unquote" fire, no cap. That intro music is from an artist and a pretty good artist. And if you go to this tab at the top, music, it'll take you to this artist's little site thing that'll tell you where you can find all of that album. That intro song, it's on this album. And this artist, conveniently named Will Pardon, super not very clever. Feel like there's some copyright infringement on that. You can go there and take a look and listen to all the music from that album. Either way, Will Pardon, he's the one who wrote that intro music. No relation. Anyway, thanks for joining Sunday through that whole cringe thing with the music. We're going to get into it. So last week, Biden stepped. No, that was a week before. Either way, all my weeks are messed up, guys. This political season's been all over the place. You guys have been able to tell there's news dropping every day. It makes it hard putting this show together and all the fun clips, all the things that I had lined up yesterday. I'm like, let's scrap them all. We're going with something different. But I did want to make a mention of the Kamala thing. The one thing that I have noticed, and she keeps coming out and talking about how she's going to fix all of the problems that we have right now. We're going to get into that. As if she hasn't been in office this whole time. And so I thought that was pretty convenient. So the thing about the Kamala thing that we're seeing all over the place are the polls. I don't know if you've paid attention. I don't have a Joe Scarborough clip, but I'm sure he's over at Morning Joe talking about how Kamala is just destroying the polls. And I kind of knew this was going to happen. And our favorite, conservative right-wing person, old Benny Shapiro, did it. Let me fix that real quick. Let's see if that fixed it. It fixed it. All right, so that's going to be probably what it is because this whole program's all wonky now with bugs. Old Benny Shapiro, everybody's favorite right-wing movie maker or whatever. He was like, look, this is going to be a honeymoon period. They're going to push her. She's going to skyrocket in the polls. He said this way back when Biden first stepped down. And I was like, that's interesting. Let's see if it happens. And sure enough, everybody, all the white dudes for Kamala are coming out. All the white women for Kamala are coming out. Everybody of every race is coming out. I saw Republicans for Harris thing. They're coming out. Everyone's coming out being like, she's the greatest ever. This is our hope for the future. She's qualified. Not sure where they're getting that. They're just spilling out whatever they come up with. She's diverse, but she's not that kind of diverse. She's not a DEI hire, but she is the ultimate DEI hire. How dare you to bring that up? But we're going to bring that up every time we get a chance to. Just so you know, she's definitely not white. Now, we don't know exactly what she is, but she's definitely not white. She's kind of all over the place. It's fine. Wait till she gets on the phone with Elizabeth Warren, find out how that Native American thing comes. That'll come out. She'll do some kind of a show with a 23andMe. We'll find out she's all the things, because she's all things to all people, as the Bible would tell us. But the real truth of it is, and we kind of saw this with the Biden thing, we're all calling out, is she qualified? Because we haven't really heard a lot from her. And what we do hear from her seems a little suspicious on how she even got to where she was. Because we knew when the DNC actually did have votes for delegates and stuff like that to find out who was going to run. They didn't just swing somebody in like they did with her this time. She didn't really pull that well with the Democrats way back in the day. And we weren't sure why Biden picked her, except for he told us. It was exactly what we all thought. Was she qualified? Well, we're going to find it out. We're going to find out. Hopefully we won't find out for the next 4 years, only the next 3 months. But I've got the perfect clip. Jeez, dude, my words are all over the place today. I got the perfect clip. I'm going to pull this up. Hopefully, again, new system. You guys are test running this with me. So we're going to see how this works. I'm a big fan of this guy named Michael Malice. He was on the Joe Rogan podcast. And he dropped the R word on the Rogan podcast. And then went on to continue. We're going to watch that. And then someone put clips. Because he gives a great example of who Kamala is from his perspective. Happens to be mine too. And then people put the evidence right behind it. So it's a decently long clip. We're just going to watch it. I might stop it halfway through.
Right. If you're going after Officer Harris, you're either racist.
Hold on. Let's try this out. All right. So let's watch this clip. This is from the Joe Rogan podcast.
Right. If you're going after Officer Harris, you're either racist or sexist or ableist.
Right.
So they will use
ableist.
Yeah, because she's a retard.
Jesus.
She's literally retarded. I mean, Ukraine is a country in Europe, and Russia is another country and a powerful country, and Russia invaded Ukraine, and that's wrong.
What's really important?
Ukraine is a country in Europe. It exists next to another country called Russia. Russia is a bigger country. Russia is a powerful country. Russia decided to invade a smaller country called Ukraine. So basically, that's wrong.
I think of her as a wine mom.
Oh, all right. So this is the fun. It was fun listening to it because I listened to it without this extra clip involved. And I was like, I do remember her saying something along that lines. But the reason I pulled this one up is because they put it right after. Now he's going to continue. I just think it was genius. And people thought it was hyperbole. But he's making a pretty decent point here. And so we're just going to continue to watch this. But the things he calls out are pretty spot on. And so take a look.
Because bitch seems like she's 3 deep by noon. And she's got the 3 phases of wine mom. She's got happy drunk. Oh my God, this cereal's got a rabbit on it. It's so great. Cackling, cackling, cackling.
Look at my bus! Oh my God, I love it! Oh wow! Look at the bus! Wheels on the bus go round and round.
So as far as, all right, we all knew like Joe Biden in the race was going to be a landslide, or at least we were like, this is going to be a tough one for the Democrats to run old Joey boy, especially after the debate, and the decline is in real time and everyone's starting to admit it. He's a hero though for stepping down, but then people like Kamala is definitely like, look at the polls. She's definitely going to do good. Has anyone seen these? Is anyone watching this and these clips and being like, yeah, totally makes sense. Let's just continue on.
Then there is trying to drunk at work, where you're trying to make sense, but you don't. Space is around us all and unites us all and inspires us all.
Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day. Every day it is time for us to agree.
Space is exciting. It spurs our imaginations, and it forces us to ask big questions. Space, it affects us all, and it connects us all.
And then there's I'm being stern so you don't realize how plastered I am, and I'm making a point. Dr. Little Girl was me. Now I'm going to go upstairs and don't knock on the door because I'm going to pass out. So,
And, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
We are going to the border. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe.
All right, so that was basically the gist of the clip. Now, I have another one for you guys if you're still not sold on this. But, all right, I also, watched a podcast with somebody in Congress, and they're like, yeah, everybody in D.C. is drunk all the time. And that doesn't surprise me. To be honest, that probably is fairly traditional. I could totally see the time of the Revolutionary War and Ben Franklin and all them they met in a pub. There's no way they were, stone cold sober. But for it to be a tradition to continue on all the way to this day, isn't surprising. It's also pretty self-evident. So she's probably hammered most of the time. But even if she was hammered, someone's writing those speeches. So who's writing the speeches? Unless she's going off script, and that's just in the back of her head to just immediately talk to you like you're a kid. And that's the one thing I picked up on that. It just sounds like every time she gives a speech, it just sounds like she's trying to explain to a toddler. But that's not it. Every time I see anybody on the left side, and this is, again, we're going to get into the cult thing, but every time I see someone, they always seem to talk like that. Like they're talking to children. And I can't seem to figure out what that is. If they're not code switching, which is another tactic you would do to children, where and we saw this recently, the same thing Hillary Clinton did, which they go into a South, they're talking in a black church, and all of a sudden they get the country accent. We got it, man. When they do all that pandering thing, they do that too, but they never sound intelligent. And look, this comes from a guy who can, when he needs to sound intelligent, but cracks jokes the whole time on his podcast. And so I'm not saying that I'm rocket science, but I'm also not running for president yet. No, I'm joking. I'm probably never going to run for president. Either way, it doesn't matter. I can still do a better job, and I don't even have a script I'm reading. And so that makes me nervous that whoever she hired has a terrible script or can't write speeches for anything. But the thing about the pandering is, and just to juxtapose it real quick, and then we're going to get to another clip, just a point. Next time Trump talks, and maybe the context is pandering, but I don't see that. If he's in the Midwest, he's talking about Midwestern issues. But he never changes. And that was the other thing. I didn't pull this clip up, but everyone's talking about how awful he did at this Black journalist convention, and how he just didn't treat them any differently. He just spoke. He was brash. He was absurd, and he was rude, and all the blah, 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 blah. But if you notice, that's just how he is to people who don't agree with him. It doesn't matter what color you are, what race you are, what religion you are. He talks to you. If you're with him, he'll talk to you one way. If you're against him, he's going to talk to you another way. And so the screen froze again. I'm gonna keep having to do that. Apparently, it's just going to be an ongoing thing until I can figure out how to fix it. But either way, he doesn't seem to pander, so I do appreciate that. Let's watch this other clip. If you're like, David, that was like 4 times out of her whole career. There's tons of things here recently. I think it's recently. Someone asked her about inflation. And I know politicians are supposed to be sharp-tongued, and they're supposed to be quick and witty, and they won't answer your question, but they'll do a good job enough to where you're not really sure if they answered it, but either way, you feel good after. So here's a clip I found of someone asking her about inflation. Check this clip out.
What else are you going to do to fix this problem with inflation?
All right, thank you. Well, let's start with this. Prices have gone up, and families and individuals are dealing with the realities of that bread costs more, that gas costs more. And we have to understand what that means. That's about the cost of living going up. That's about having to stress and stretch limited resources. That's about a source of stress for families that is not only economic, but is on a daily level, something that is a heavy weight to carry. So it is something that we take very seriously, very seriously. And we know from the history of this issue in the United States that when you see these prices go up, it has a direct impact on the quality of life for all people in our country. So it's a big issue, and we take it seriously.
That's my point. Like, yeah, she's not wrong, but there's nothing to do. She's just saying what we all know. There's no answer to it. And it seems like if she is elected, it's going to be another 4 years of just nonstop of this. And at that point in time, like, I felt bad for making fun of an old man. I'm not going to feel bad for making fun of her every time she comes out with a new clip. So we'll see what happens in the future. But going back on the coal thing. Now, there's a ton of people out online that are pushing Kamala. She's the greatest thing since sliced bread or whatever. And again, it's the same thing. Like, you were the same people that told us Joe was senile and cogent. And we all knew that was wrong. And then you're telling us the same thing about Kamala. Is there something we don't know? Is she like super smart? She was a prosecutor. I mean, she was a bit of a chameleon. She kind of backtracked on a lot of things. And it just seems kind of odd that they would still try to do the same gameplay as they did with Biden. Like, don't believe your eyes. This is all cheap fakes, but they're not. And I don't know what other, even if you were like, well, Trump he gaffes all the time. I keep seeing stuff from people talking about Trump being old. Like, look how he doesn't even know where he is. Like, your lies don't work. And maybe they do, but it's got to be on nothing but low information voters. Like, there's no way, as being someone objective, there's no way. So here's the options. Either these people are in a cult and they legit can't see that Kamala is just bad at her job, or they're being paid. Now, I'm going to have to lean on the pay. There can't be this many people who have large platforms online this blind to it. So I would assume they have to be paid, or there's one third option. They just still hate Trump. The thing that I keep getting is people are super scared that if Trump gets elected, it's going to be dictator. That's a big thing. Dictator on day one. I think even in that, I don't have the clip, I'll look it up. I think he said he'll be a dictator on day one for a day. And the context of what it means to be a dictator to Trump, this is what Trump thinks to be a dictator. He said he's going to deport all the illegal immigrants. He's going to drill, baby, drill. That's his definition of what his dictatorship is going to look like. Just normal presidential stuff. Pretty libertarian presidential stuff, except for the illegal immigrants. Depends on which libertarian you talk to. But yeah, the drill, baby, drill. Like, it's outrageous. But they're going to make Trump out to be whatever it is, and people fall for it. People still have TDS. But before we get into that, because we're going to talk about that, if you're still not convinced, obviously this is a paid, but this is the stuff they're putting out there. And I'm not sure, like, I get they pay TikTokers, and that's a big thing that keeps coming out. TikTok influencers come over like, hey, the Kamala Harris campaign was trying to pay me to say something good about them. And even then they're just leaking it. But here's a tweet, and I thought this was great. I want to read this. This is a congressman from California. This is Ted Lieu from California. This was a tweet on July 31st. So VP Harris's fundraising is busing FR, which I think means for real in Gen Z, whatever. She understands the assignment. She'll protect fundamental freedoms and defend democracy. No cap. Donate below to maximize your joint slay. Now, putting aside the fact that, dude, I don't know what joint slay is. Like, I'm that old. I don't even know what that means. I don't even know if that is a term. And so maybe they felt, maybe one Gen Zer in his cabinet was like, this'll slap with the kids. I don't even get that. But that seems like a desperate attempt, does it not? Does that seem like something a congressman would put out? Does it not seem like these people are flailing? And so to say they're in a cult might be far-fetched, except for these people. Like, if you were a congressman and you were like, I want to be remembered for all the great things I did, could you imagine someone at your funeral pulling that up? Now, I could be saying this and someone at my funeral could be like, check out this Pardon Will Live episode. This is just a disgrace. But again, I'm not in Congress. So I just wonder what these people assume. They'll just be forgotten. But I don't think they're having a problem with lying anymore. And so, I mean, we talk about this all the time. The media lies to you. We know this. politicians are going to lie. This is all par for the course. It just seems like they're hitting new standards of low. Now, with the cult thing, because we're going to talk about the MAGA cult and their reactions to things, I got one more video clip. So J.D. Vance is the new VP on Trump's VP. Sorry, my itches. It's Trump's VP, and he came out with a clip way like 2001. He talked about childless cat ladies, and in that clip, he was just talking about the fundamentals and the importance of people having kids and growing up, and people, the Democrats' left side took that and ran with it. They're like, he hates everyone who doesn't have kids, and that's, even that was a stretch, but that's fine. And you're like, well, that may pull sensible people. That might really sound off to single women in that demographic, which is obviously what they're trying to go for. That might sound off to the single women to find out that, vice president said something about childless cat ladies shouldn't be running the country. I don't know how you would say that that's wrong, but if you were, be like, well, it's not wrong. It's totally correct. They shouldn't be, but it's insensitive. You will get that. But here's the other thing you'll also get. And here's a clip I found. And since I saw it, you got to see it too. So you'll get the somewhat reasonable people being like, that was a bad thing, J.D. Vance said. But the other thing with that package, you get this other thing packaged with it.
I'm a childless cat woman, but I'm happy.
Yeah, what is your message to Vance?
You don't mess with childless cat ladies.
Have you always been this enthusiastic about politics, or is this new?
Since Donald Trump got in, I watched Rachel through his whole term because I had to stay ahead.
All right, that clip was from Tenet Media, as you saw that, giving them a shout out. She watches Rachel. I think that's Mad Al. I don't think Rachel Ray's on TV anymore, but I would say she probably did get all of her information on Trump probably from like a Rachel Ray or Rachel. So there's probably tons of Rachels out there. But most likely Rachel Maddow. But see, that's what I'm telling you. When you start doing things like sending out tweets like no cap, for real, bussin', you're going to get all the other things into, which is just par for the course. Like I said, just part and parcel of the politics game. But that also makes you think that they would be a little bit more slick to how they're going about things when it comes to the cult. Now, that lady, regardless of what you think, is somebody's grandma. She's obviously, I mean, we all knew theater kids were eventually, pause again. Anyway, this is driving me nuts. We all knew that theater kids were eventually going to get older and just started popping up and doing, what I thought is they would just do like stomp dances in the middle of a mall for attention, but what they're really doing is putting cat masks on and getting into politics. But that's what you get. That's what you get when you start playing those dirty games. You get all kinds of stuff in there too. So I don't know how else to parse this out, but the left, the blue and on, the left, other than the fact that they just want to mutilate kids, obviously they're in a cult. But sensible people, I think, are falling for it. But the downside is you get crazies in there with you. Now, moving on from the left and going on to the MAGA side, we saw the MAGA cult rear its ugly head this week too. And I rarely, every time Joe Scarborough would bring up MAGA and their cultish, and I was like, nah, I don't really see that. But there was one instance where I started to like, well, maybe I'm not being objective. Maybe I should pay attention. And at the RNC, after Trump was got shot at, he showed up, he had the ear bandage or whatever. And then there's pictures of people at the RNC wearing fake ear bandages. That seems cringe. I don't know if it's cult-like, because everything is becoming, politics is becoming a sport. So it almost felt like they were wearing another addition to the jersey. So I want you to think about this. Now, you'd be like, David, you're just giving excuses. No, I just think every political party has their mascots and their things. Like it's just sports now. Just think about it sports-wise. Every sport has their hardcore fans. They show up with like the face and they have no shirt on and their body's painted and it has like the number of jersey or whatever. And they're just wild and crazy, and half of them are drunk. I expect that with the left and the right too. I mean, I expect that with the libertarians, but that's always going to be there. That's never even going to. They won't even show up to like a black tie dinner with clothes on. So that's to be a given. The libertarians are always going to be like that. But they will be more about that, less of a party, more they'll be dressed up crazily just because of some particular freedom that they want, like 2A, which we're going to talk about in a minute, or whatever they're doing over in the libertarian camp. But the MAGA people get really pumped for it. They get really into it. Again, it's like a sport. It's like you have to start looking at this team, like the crazy cat lady with the cat mask on. It's just a thing. It's just a sports team. It's like her wearing a cheese wedge. Same with the MAGA. Do I think it's cringe? Yeah, but I think half these people, these are boomers, man. What are you gonna do? You shut their sports down for like 2 years. Of course, they were going to shift on over to politics if they hadn't before. But yeah, I don't see the younger generation doing the same thing with the ear thing. But I definitely do see some cult-like behavior coming from the right. So here's a quick story. I don't know if you guys watch this online, but our boy Kyle Rittenhouse came out, went to some kind of freedom con. Ron Paul was there, and he got to sit down and talk to him. And he came out with a video and posted on Twitter saying that he was disappointed in Trump's stance on the 2A, rightfully so, not wrong. And he was going to write in Ron Paul for this election coming up. And he says, and I have no qualms about it, no apologies. Posted that, and all of right-wing Twitter, not all of it, actually, there was some, like Cernovich came out, a bunch of people came out and was like, it's just a kid, let him do what he wants. But there were some hardcores like cat turds, and that's a right-wing person, by the way, online. And a bunch of other people came out and they were like, you're dead to us now. Basically, they said, you're dead to us. We went to bat for you during the Rittenhouse thing. And, we went to bat and you betrayed us with this. Now, there's a few things I want to talk about. Kyle is, I'm going to break this down really quick. Kyle is, number one, he's young, and he has every right to want to write in Ron Paul. I tweeted underneath that, which I think is the same thing I said when all the Ron DeSantis Republicans came out. We're like, we're going to write in Ron because we hate Trump and what he's done to the party. At any point, like, all right, if you were to sit down and go, I'm going to write in Ron Paul or Ron DeSantis, I don't know what it is with the Rons. Wouldn't you ask them first? I mean, it's not like Kyle he just talked to Ron. If he was like, man, I love this Ron Paul. I love Ron Paul. I want Ron Paul to be president, but it's not going to happen. He's not running. There's no chance. It seems like a bit of a virtue signal, or it seems like a little bit of leverage, like he's trying to get Trump to come out and be more 2A. Trump has some missteps with 2A, but it's not that bad that I recall. Maybe he's awful. I mean, he's awful on a lot of things. It would not surprise me to be awful on 2A. So maybe it was a power play on Rittenhouse's part. But if I were him and I was talking to Ron Paul and be like, hey, man, I love you. I think you should be president. I'm going to write your name in. What do you say to that, good sir? Wouldn't you do that? And I guarantee you Ron Paul will be like, don't do that. That's dumb. Matter of fact, Kyle Rittenhouse has to have a ton of right-wing conservative friends that they get called up and been like, I'm thinking about posting a video, tweet, about writing in Ron Paul. How do you think this is a good idea? And I guarantee most of them have been like, no, because I don't think it's well thought out. It seems either one, you are trying to leverage the right to be better on 2A, but there might be other ways to do it. Maybe you're freaking Kyle Rittenhouse. It's not like you're not invited to Mar-a-Lago. Maybe talk to somebody in the Trump camp about getting better 2A. That seems like a better route to go than just to post on Twitter, because the things you're going to get on Twitter that are worse than the backlash you got from the hardcore right-wing media people, pundits that are high up in the pecking order. Worse than that is he got a bunch of people who are voting for Trump extremely disheartened, because basically everyone knows this. If you're going to write in Ron Paul, it's not a vote for Kamala, but it's definitely a vote against Trump. It's literally a vote against Trump. And so I think people are offended, and I'll tell you why people got so riled up about this, and then why this cult behavior dips a little bit deeper. And it might actually go for the same for the left wing too, but their stances I don't think actually combat the same way it does for the right. And I'll tell you why. What I don't think Kyle Rittenhouse picked up on is when you do things like tweet out like, I'm going to write in Ron Paul, what you're basically telling him is that you are so at a position, you're so at a level of well-being that if Trump loses, it won't really affect you that much. But your principles are far more important to hold on to, not just to hold on to, because he could have just not said anything. But he really made a point to let everyone know, as if he wanted other people to follow in and do the same. That seems not like a backstab to the Trump community, but it definitely seems like he just signaled out to all the pleb Republicans, the people like not a Republican, but the people on the lower on the scale, going, "Hey, I know," and he probably didn't think about this through, but this is what I would have told Kyle before he posted. You're basically telling all of the middle class flyover state conservatives, "Hey, I know you're having a hard time feeding your family and paying your mortgage and getting to work, and your retirement's washed up, and everything's falling apart. And I know you're really worried about how life is going to be, but my virtue signal is super important right now because I have this one issue, this two-way thing, and I want to get that across. Not in the way it would be smart, but to send out a signal to everybody. So maybe Trump will see it on Twitter." That seems like a slap in the face of those people. Not to Cat Turd, not to Jack Posobiec, not to all these high. They're going to be fine. Matter of fact, they'll probably make a ton of money if Trump loses. But what about all of us? What about all of us that are sitting back being like, I fall more in the libertarian camp, and I plan to vote for Trump, just because I theologically, my convictions alone would keep me from voting on the left side. But because I remember what it was like under Trump, and I know he has terrible spending habits, but there's no way it's going to be worse than the Democrats. So is it a lesser of two evils? And you're like, well, David, you shouldn't vote for a lesser of two evil. You're like, that's cool. Tell me that when, my friends aren't struggling with GoFundMe's because they can't pay for their, medical situations, like simple things. And people are just like, I can't take care of this issue, so I'm just going to deal with it. That's a real issue. And so I think the thing that, well, it never gets not annoying. The thing that I think that I personally butt up against, like I get it, and he can vote for whoever he wants. It wasn't going to change my vote, but I definitely felt, man, and I come back to this all the time because this is something that's very sympathetic on my part to say, I can't really relate, but I can feel this. And this is what makes me think about all the people who are voting for Trump because they desperately need something else going on in their life. I still think of the Afghanistan pullout, and I'll always bring that up. Because it's not like, to me, I'm like, tax dollars, Biden left all that over there and blah, blah. That's one argument to have. And that's fair as a citizen, of the United States. But I have a ton of friends who fought over there. And some of them came back different. And some of them are not doing good. And I think about how they look at the Afghanistan pullout. And how much they're like, God, I went over there for what? I sacrificed my life for not even a greater purpose for you just to pull. And I think about how they feel about stuff like that. So I'm very cautious on how I react to political things that go on, and try to keep other people who aren't me in mind, and especially when it came to the Kyle Rittenhouse thing. So part of me was not upset with the backlash. Now, I wasn't going to unfollow him. I wasn't going to kick him out. I think that's dumb. But I am glad that in 12 hours later, he posted again. He's like, I retract that. He's voting for Trump now. He realized it was bad. And everyone's like, look at the MAGA cult put him through a struggle session, and they got him to change his vote. And most likely someone called him up and hopefully gave him the argument that I'm giving right now. Like, hey man, I understand the politics is a game and everybody's making money off of it, and everyone's got their side that they want to win. But in the midst of this, left cultist and right cultist, and this battle of who's going to propagate and propagandize the public better, and who's going to be able to get the I understand these are power plays, but there's a ton of people in the middle of, in America that are stuck in the middle going like, I understand this is cool and all, but I have a hard time, trying to get my life to stay afloat. The last thing I need to do is worry about Kyle Rittenhouse influencing a ton of other people to want to write in Ron Paul. Now, again, I love Ron Paul. I would love for Ron Paul to be president. If I thought he even had a small chance or it would even make a difference, I would vote for Ron Paul. He's probably the best politician out there. Still, it makes no sense to virtue signal that way. But the MAGA quote unquote cult came out in full rage, and Kyle Rittenhouse retracted his statement. And I feel like that was cringy. I feel like it was absurd, but at the same time, the political parties are always in turmoil. Everyone's like, look at them, look at the Trump parties, they're falling apart. I'm like, no, it's just another thing, another day, another argument to be had. No one's going to remember and it's not going to matter anymore. But in that midst of that constant news cycle of these celebrity politicians and people coming out saying whatever they want, just don't forget there's people in the middle of that trying to figure out if I was myself, I was just disappointed in Kyle. Not because he was going to write in Ron Paul. I still think that's a great idea. Do it. But I was disappointed in the fact that he forgot that the world is watching. And a lot of people are like, that's cool. I'm glad Kyle Rittenhouse can stand on his principles while I can't. I have to walk to work. That's cool and all. That's the other thing about the principle argument. And this happens in libertarian. I'll end on this libertarian thing. The principle argument's great. I think people should stand on their principles no matter what. I heard this from the Ron DeSantis group. I hear this from libertarians day and night because they're very much purists. They're very much about their principles. Here's the thing about principles. And everyone's like, well, what about winning? Do you sacrifice your principles to win the race? There's two big points to that. So in the Bible, it talks about, what is it to gain the world if you lose your soul? I don't think changing your political strategy is losing your soul. I look at it more as allegiance to Christ versus who you're going to vote for. I don't think voting for Trump. I don't think when you die and you get to heaven, St. Peter, Paul, whatever the Catholics believe is at the gate being like, that time you voted for Trump, right? Ain't going to work now. Scooch on. I don't think any of that's real. I think it's a fear-mongering thing. I think people are allowed to vote for whoever they want. If you're a Christian, you want to vote for Kamala Harris because you think she is going to further the gospel. I have some questions, but I guess that makes sense in whatever worm-eating brain that you have. But you can have principles and stand on those without sacrificing any of your own. So my personal principles is I would prefer the country to move down a more Christian path. And I'll vote for whoever I think that works out. I don't sacrifice my principles because I vote for Trump. Because is Trump even a Christian? I don't know, probably not. I don't flake on my principles for that. Because one principle I have is to not be an idiot. That is a principle. And to be a bit like the Bible talks about being. This is basically what we're talking about. There's scripture about being innocent as a dove and as shrewd as a viper. People always forget about that shrewd as a viper part. Now, when it comes to my personal principles, I'm a man of my word. I'll tell you the truth. I'm not going to lie to you. And if I think Trump is a better outfit to go down, I'm not even looking for the country to be Christian at all. I'm just looking for the country not to fall apart. And so I can stand on my principles. If you were to be like, David, that's not very principled of you. For me to be your purest concept of principles, for me to do that properly, I would literally have to write in Jesus Christ for president. And I don't even think that's, again, a Ron Paul thing. I think Jesus would be like, David, cool, shout out and all, super dumb. And don't be an idiot. Be as shrewd as a viper. And so that principles argument's cool. If Kyle Rittenhouse was to come out and be like, that 2A thing that I was fighting for this whole time, that's not really important. I don't really care about 2A anymore because I love Trump and I'm going to bow down to him. Then that would be sacrificing your principles. But Kyle can be like, hey, Trump is terrible on 2A, but I'm going to vote for him because he's better than the Democrats. How do you lose your principles by doing that? Nope, you're just as shrewd. You're still innocent as a dove, still shrewd as a viper. Hit me up in the comments if you disagree. I'd love to hear an opinion outside of that. Maybe I'm simplifying this too much. All right, to the thing I promised, how to avoid being in a cult. I've got 3 things for you. Three examples to make sure that you can stay out of the left cult, the right cult, whatever cult, Jim Jones cult, Scientology, whatever cult you want to throw in there. And this is, even people talk about Christianity being a cult. I can tell you why this doesn't work, because these 3 principles will keep you out of being in a cult, especially a political one. Number 1, meaningful dissent. Anytime you can have meaningful dissent, and still, and my point is basically like a Kyle Rittenhouse, except for taking that and reorganizing that down and being like, hey, I like Trump. I'm going to vote for Trump if I would like to see these things happen. Having a meaningful dissent with people on that side, that would probably be good. But if you see something in your party, like all of them coming out saying, I'm unfollowing, disowned, you should buck up against that. Because having meaningful dissent, you can't destroy that. it's the same with any kind of cult. Like if the leftists come out and they're like, I don't know if this Joe. Remember when they're like, a lot of people are coming up and like, I don't know, is Joe Biden going to be really good? Fired, canceled, get out of here. You're a racist. Anytime, even if you were a Democrat, be like, Kamala seems to not be able to put her words together. Racist, sexist. You just want Trump to be your Hitler. You're a Nazi now. Meaningful dissent. If you can have meaningful dissent without being like, well, I'd like to say this thing, but I'm afraid I'm going to get canceled, then there's an issue. And so you see that on the right and on the left. As long as we keep that meaningful dissent thing up and have a good conversation about it. Libertarian. Oh, by the way, I'm bringing libertarians. They're pretty good about the meaningful dissent thing. If anything, libertarians, they love to talk, they love to argue, and they love to debate. So you'll never not get a take that isn't brought up in a libertarian camp. Some of the takes that shouldn't even be there. Those takes will still be brought up. So meaningful dissent is in no short order on the libertarian side. But on the right wing, the left wings, it can be an issue. That would be the number one. The second one, and this is important, is laughter. This one I'm going to explain a little bit. You to make sure you're not in a cult, you need to be able to laugh. Dang it. Sorry about that. To make sure you're not in a cult, to know that you're not in a cult, to make sure your blinders aren't up. Check all your blind sides in whatever party you're in, whatever church you're in, whatever religion. To make sure you can check those blind sides. Make sure you can laugh. And not mocking, but just a good laugh. A good chuckle at yourself, at your party's leader, Trump. Make sure you can have those laughs and that they're well received. So the thing about even me being, hardcore right wing or whatever I am, I love talking about Trump and how ridiculous the things he says is. I think he's hilarious. I think he's self-aware, and I think he laughs at himself all the time. Recently, he made a joke about his hair. Again, the guy's constantly making fun of his skin color, how he's orange, how his hair is. He's constantly making fun of himself. And that's how you know, that's not cult behavior. But if you were to laugh at anything on the left, and that starts to pop up as being like, well, you're a bigot, you're a Nazi, you can't laugh. These jokes are off limits. Anytime jokes like that are off limits, what if they're tasteful jokes? Are they still off limits? Even if they make fun of a certain group or a certain people group or race, religion, ethnicity, that's when you know that there's something going on that's not right. So you should be able to laugh at yourself by your own political takes. Sometimes I have takes that are, I say this all the time. My political takes are not they're not super intelligent all the time because I'm not a political guy. I like to do what I do. I like to make things and create with my hands and build houses and paint with watercolors. I just like that. And so there's a level of seriousness that I take especially when I'm doing, these shows. I'm fairly serious about it when it needs to be. But most of the time I just crack jokes because you need to be able to laugh, especially in the time we're living in now. You definitely need to be able to laugh. So the one thing about the MAGA cult, I don't think it works, is they're constantly, if you can make fun of them and still be considered in the party, then I think the party is healthy. But as soon as you start to get some weird Laura Loomer kind of vibe from maybe even Trump himself, if you can crack jokes about Trump and he finds it, somewhat enjoyable. If he stops cracking jokes about himself, then I would start to get a little concerned. But for the most part, laughter, I think it's a complete disinfectant when it comes to that cultish like behavior. And so last one, I'm going to make this one fairly brief, but this is probably the most important. So if you stuck around for this one, this is my big thing to keep you out of any kind of cults, and they tie the other two in front. Is having a proper hierarchy of power and in a proper place for each thing. And I said this when it came to the Trump thing. Everyone was like, oh, they worship Trump like his God. No, they don't. Most of them don't. And those who have a God, like Christians, even Muslims, Jews, you can put everybody in there. As long as they have a higher power that they actually believe in, not that they just claim they do or whatever for whatever reasons they want, but they actually have that, it helps set everything in its proper place. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why this actually keeps the cult thing at bay. Because when you remove that aspect, and I say this every time, there has to be something to fill it when it comes to the ultimate power. And so a lot of people, especially on the left, they have a tendency to be godless. That's not a surprise to anybody. But because of that, the ultimate power in reality has to come from basically the government, especially if it's like a world government, like a WF or a globalist or whatever. But government seems to be the highest power. And so their biggest issues become ultimate priorities because they have nothing to petition to outside of the government. So this is what I mean by that. This is where the cult thing gets me more nervous on the left than it does the right. If there is no God and government is the highest priority, the highest hierarchy of everything, when you need something desperately, you have to go to them for it, which means everything that you have is going to be pushed into that petition of power. Because that's all we're really doing in life. We're working hard, we're doing the best we can. But at night, we think about how do we petition the world to move in a direction that's helpful for us, helpful for our families, stuff like that. And for the Christian, it's normally done with prayer of going like, I get the government is where it is, and I can vote because even voting, a lot of people don't believe in voting. It might be stolen. Who cares? I still look at voting like Pascal's wager. Like, if it's not real, what did I lose? And if it is real, then that's fine. So I look up Pascal's wager if you don't know. I look at voting that way. And anybody's argument like, why you vote? You're not going to vote your way out of this. Doesn't matter. It's still my responsibility. But going back to it, if you don't have the hierarchy, you don't have God at the top, then your only petition you have, you're not praying to God for the things like the world to get better. You got to basically petition the government. And so whatever power the government holds as the ultimate power, you're going to be sought after. You'll do anything. You'll lie, you'll cheat, you'll steal elections. You'll do anything you can, a nice little joke in there, to make sure that your ideology is pushed because it's God now. And so that's the only petition power you have. Which enables it to perform like a cult better than anything else. And that's the problem with cults, is normally it's either a center ideology or center person. There's no petition outside of that. They are the thing. They are the thing that you would petition to for power. That's what a cult leader would be. And on the left side, I would say, an ideology like Marxism, it's the ultimate power. That's what they're petitioning for, that heaven on earth concept. All found through the government. So if you want to stay out of a cult, the best advice I can have is have meaningful dissent, especially with your peers. Be able to laugh at yourself, at your political party and its the top leaders, and make sure you have a hierarchy of power that is like in proper order, or you will find yourself bowing down to the government just because you I don't know if I explained that well enough, and I apologize. But here's a good scenario. If you're starving, right, and your kids are starving, and the only way to get food in your reality is, I don't know, bow down at the bread line or whatever, and you have to do, maybe they say, hey, there's 4 lights instead of 3. Maybe they make you lie. Maybe they make you tell on your neighbor when they're having a party during COVID. Maybe they ask you to do things that you would normally not do. But the only avenue for your safety and the only avenue for your success and the only avenue for your survival is by doing what the government says. It makes that a lot harder to dissent because there's things in the line. But if you do have a higher power, you do believe that God is above all things, you can give the government the largest middle finger you want while petitioning to the next power up, the higher one. That's where the faith thing comes in. So got real preachy on the end, but that's just a little something to keep in back in mind. I'm not trying to get theological. I'm supposed to be making jokes. I didn't make that many tonight. But yeah, so that's my 3 things. Again, dissent, meaningful dissent, laughter, and have a higher power that. And if you're like, well, I believe in a God, but I'm a bit agnostic, I'm not sure. Now would be a good time to do some research and to look into that. Because I don't think the being agnostic thing is going to really work well if things go down the path they're going now. And I'm not saying like you can't be agnostic. I'm just saying when it comes to when you need it, it would do better for you to have a little bit more footing than just to be like, I'm not sure. It'll last a lot longer. It'll make the painful things like not being able to afford groceries. It'll make those things a little bit more meaningful and tolerable. It rains on, and the Bible says it rains on the just and the unjust alike, which means bad things are going to happen to the people who do evil and the people who do good. And bad things are just going to happen. Good things are going to happen. However you look at rain, it's either a good thing or a bad thing, but it's going to happen to both. It's best not to be alone in that aspect. And so that's my sermon for today. It's Sunday. You guys got preached at towards the end. Anyway, I hope you guys have a wonderful week. This week will probably be eventful. I'll try to figure out this. I actually have another. That thing right there. I got to figure out this video camera thing. I'll try to figure that out. Hopefully everything worked. Again, I'm working with a new program. Hopefully the video clips played. Hopefully all this stuff went well. I have no idea. I'll find out here in a minute. But I have a new webcam, so I'll try that one out next time. And then maybe I'll solve it, or maybe I won't. And maybe I'll be fumbling through another Pardonable Live trying to fix my camera the whole time. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you have an extremely blessed week. I hope you find that higher power. I hope you are able to laugh at your political party and have meaningful dissent and good questions. But anyway, above all, I hope you guys come back next week. That's my priority. Anyway,